Nyad said that when she did her Cuba, Florida crossing, it was going to be bigger than Gertrude Ederle's
Mm.
crossing of the English Channel. And if you look at uh, Gertrude Ederle, when she got back home to New York, they gave her a ticker tape parade down uh, whatever street they do ticker tape parades in New York City, and it was huge.
Mm.
As well
Yeah.
they should.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
And
it's amazing.
no, Nyad Swim was not bigger than Gertrude Ederle's. And Gertrude, like I said, Gertrude Ederle was a stickler for the rules. When she made her first attempt in 1925, she felt like she was doing fine. She was an amazing swimmer. She was an Olympic gold medalist.
Mm.
She was she could swim anything. And but the people in the boat thought that the conditions were too rough and that she wasn't going to be able to make it, and someone jumped in and touched her. And that was it. She knew that was it. And so
Did they think she was drowning or not doing well or something like that?
yeah, I think they thought the conditions were too rough, and they might have thought she'd become unconscious or something. They couldn't.
Yeah.
You know, when the waves are big, you can't see people for a while sometimes. And
They
so,
may have seen her swallow some water or something that caused the alarm. So okay.
And
Go ahead.
there are some great books about Ederle
Yeah.
that talk about all this.
She was only 21 when she did the swim in 26. So she was 20 the first attempt. So very, at her
Fit.
height, I guess. She lived to be 98. So I think she was a pretty good shape.
I'm gonna start swimming.
Okay.
She didn't do any double crossing or anything. So.
Well, yeah, back then, the first double was, I think, the first English double wasn't until 1961, I think. So it probably never crossed her mind.
Okay.
And is that a 10-minute rule in the UK as well? Like,
I'm sorry?
10 Is that another 10-minute rule where you cross, you 10-minute out of the water? So it's the same internationally. Okay.
Yeah, those rules, though Diana will tell you differently, those rules are standard for marathon swims, for a traditional marathon swim anywhere. 10 minutes out of the water, if you're doing a multiple crossing, and
10 minutes on the hour, 10 minutes every half. What are the real rules? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
I'm just going to say 1961, Antonio Abertondo from Argentina.
First double.
First double.
So I kind of want to get the rules. All right. So no one can touch you. And then the 10-minute if you're doing a double cross, which is, yeah. All right. What other rules you got?
You pretty much know them all. I mean, you can't touch the boat.
Okay, no touching the boat.
You can't touch the swimmer can't touch anything.
Okay.
And nobody else can touch.
How do you get food then? They throw it.
Yeah, how do you get that?
Does that attract sharks?
Nowadays they have like a pole with a little net on the end, and
you can touch the pole.
Interesting.
You can touch the food. You got to get the food or the drink.
Who's monitoring this?
Well, that's a good question too.
Did you get a little? Well, actually, I think it would be more tiring to have one arm out of the water for extended period of time than have it in the water. But I don't know.
Yeah, whether you're touching something.
Oh yeah, yeah. Anytime you've got to hold something up, it's tiring. But
so it wouldn't be an advantage.
Normally, in a normal swim, your breaks are very short. A minute, 2 or 3, maybe. Because you want to keep swimming, and so the breaks, and especially breaks for people who are trying to set records. They'll grab the food, drink down, or and then head off real quick.
Like John eats chicken wings.
Yeah, and the great thing is the bathroom breaks are probably, they don't really matter
as you go.
Now, okay, here's something. But if you go number 2, do you just do this with your Speedos?
You just let her rip? I don't know. What do you do?
That's what the grease is for. Just slides right up.
I'm
You
just
know,
curious.
I'm going to say it probably varies from swimmer to swimmer, but I think you, John, you probably have it there.
Okay.
Okay.
It's like,
The
oh,
truth-
did
I
you
thought it
see
was the
that?
grease. I thought
The
that
truth
was-
hurts.
But back
Because
to the
marathon
rules.
runners do that.
Mhm. No, that's it.
Do they seriously?
It's a real-
They just-
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, marathon runners got a lot of issues. They have a serious increase in bladder infections and all sorts of things because they try not to stop, when they keep going.
And
Yeah,
they're
it's a
just
lot.
told just to go.
Yeah,
Just
but
go
you don't
and
have
let her rip. Wow.
you don't have to worry about that in the water.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
no, that's a,
And
that's a good-
actually, that's also a safety issue because if you stop peeing, it means you probably got some kind of kidney issue going
Yeah.
on from the cold. So you have to be very careful about that.
Okay.
oh man.
But back to the rules.
Yeah.
But back in the old days when I used to swim, they had there would just be someone who would hand you the food. You couldn't touch them, but you could take the food or the drink or whatever, and just you couldn't touch. And when on my double crossing, when I was sort of at my lowest point and I was ready to quit, everybody on that boat knew that if I touched it, it's like tapping out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Touch the boat, you're done. And so I was swimming towards the boat, and one of my teammates who a fellow swimmer who was part of my crew, she saw me coming and she started jumping up and down on the boat, stomping her feet and yelling, "Get away from the boat." And
You can do it.
How far were you from finishing at that point? I'm kind of wondering where you get that.
I
On your
was
way back?
Was it
probably
before your second wind, or what happens?
I was probably about somewhere between 10 and 15 hours into it.
Okay. And
I imagine you get like 10th wins at that point.
Yeah.
so,
I
but
think,
the
you know-
lowest is kind of like the first third
Wow.
of the swim. Is that what it is, or the first half? Definitely.
I
Or is it matter?
It probably varies from
Okay.
person to person. For me, it was maybe between maybe around 2/3 of the way into the swim.
Okay,
But
2/3.
I don't think I got a second or third win. I was just so terrified of Cindy being angry with me that
Oh, that's
I
funny.
just wanted
That's a good.
Cindy's the one who yelled at you to get away
No.
from the boat.
Yeah, I didn't see.
to. So she's
And
the
it
one who
worked.
yelled.
She did the right thing.
But with Diana's team, none of them were familiar with anything but Diana's swims. They didn't know the rules. And even now, most legitimate swims have observers, one or two for longer swims, who know the sport. Oftentimes they've gone through some kind of training or they're marathon swimmers themselves and have observed other swims. And they document the swim, take notes every half hour, and mainly on the condition of the swimmer. And they watch out for rule breaking and stuff. And Naya she had two acquaintances on her swim who knew nothing about the sport. And so I hear that to Sarah Thomas, who on her four-way swim had one guy, Kevin Murphy, who had crossed the English Channel 33 or 34 times himself. And then another Suzanne Martin, who'd already observed a number of swims. And so there was no one who was ever going to question her, that whether or not she cheated, which she couldn't have, because they were watching. And with Nyad's, she did everything wrong. If she'd wanted to really make sure people, other marathon swimmers believed that she'd done what she'd done.
So
So,
at the
yeah.
time at that time, there was a set unset parameters that you should follow, and she chose not to, which
Yes.
makes it right from the get-go questionable.
Well, before we go there, is that all the rules? Just no one can touch, is there anything else? Do they need to have an independent, what'd you call it, referee there to monitor it? Or, especially for like a record breaking thing like this, was Guinness there? I mean, would they need to be? Was Wowza? Well, actually, let's do this before we get to that. Do we have all the rules out of the way? And then if you could tell a
Two
little bit about
rules.
about Wowza, or am I saying that right? To the if you could tell us about this organization, because
And how it evolved, when it came into existence.
Well, I believe it was founded by a guy named Stephen Munatonis, who, and I think this was sometime around 2010. We're getting into kind of murky waters here because I don't really know all the things that went on with the founding of
that's fine.
Wowza, but he was kind of the head of it.
Okay.
And he's also he's one of the few big Nyad fans in the marathon swimming community. And so, but they didn't really, they didn't ratify swims. They didn't put people on, I shouldn't say that.
They didn't, they put a statement out about hers, that it was not ratified, or that it wasn't, they were clear that they were not condoning the swim.
Yeah.
Right. That was after Stephen left.
Okay, so this is the guy that I
out.
see. Was he pushed out? Because that's what we were wondering. We were talking about this the other day. Was he pushed out, or did he leave on his own? Yeah.
I believe he was pushed out.
Got it. Okay, that's what we assumed.
They probably wouldn't say that.
What leads you to that speculation that he was pushed out?
Diana Nyad, and there was disagreement over this. That's what I read.
It was all about Nyad. She did all these things that are not according to English Channel rules, and so it was clearly never going to be an unassisted swim. But there was no one willing to ratify it, to say, look, she did it, it's unassisted, but she did it. And Stephen went in and changed her Open Waterpedia page to say Wowza had ratified the swim and had appointed her two observers. And so, but he did it all very sneakily. He didn't tell anybody he'd done it. You just had to. I had someone who was. I knew someone who was watching her page to watch for changes, and that's the only way I found out that he, saying it was Wowza, had gone in and changed her page and said it had been ratified since the day she walked ashore in Florida.
And since he's left, have they retracted that?
I'd have to go check. I think they took it off, but I'm not sure.
Greg, you had why don't you go finish your question, please?
Well, it wasn't a question. It was just a comment. We were talking a lot about Wowza, and I wanted to just point out that Wowza stands for World Open Water Swimming Association. I know you know that, but for the sake of our listeners.
And Greg, I really like that you're reading, getting the information. It really helps.
Oh, good.
For the audience.
Okay.
And me.
It does, because I don't want to do it anymore.
I've been looking up here trying to find when it started. They have an About Us page, but it doesn't say. So I assume they've been around for a while. But
he's saying 2010 around.
So their voice isn't like official, but it is significant, I guess.
Yes, I wanted to say something about that. There is no organization that oversees marathon swimming all over the world. There's no umbrella organization. major swims have their own organizations. Like English Channel has two, maybe three organizations that oversee swims in the English Channel. There's one that does Catalina Channel. There's one for the Cook Straits in New Zealand, I think. But most swims are done independently and are overseen, well, like Diana swim,
There's no organization. I see. There's no organization for the Cuba to Miami swim.
Right.
Right, because nobody's done
Now,
it yet. Well,
now,
except
some
one claim, yeah.
What was that?
No, he said no one's done it yet except for one claim.
Which is the whole point of this. I get that. So, right.
But there were the guy who's currently the head of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame asked her in 2012 if she wanted to set up an organization to make sure her swim would be seen as legitimate. And I don't think she ever responded to him.
I don't think so.
All right, let's get into it then. All right, let's just really kind of break
Let's
it down.
do some background on her first.
Well, yeah. So, let's just we've been kind of tiptoeing around it, in case somebody's just coming on. The claim was that she swam was 100 miles, 60 hours from Cuba to Miami. Is that correct?
Cuba to Key West.
To Key West. And she had done many attempts of it, or several attempts in her younger years, and a couple in the years or two before she finally claimed success with it. Is that correct?
Almost.
Okay.
She did one attempt in 1978.
Okay.
And she was using a shark cage then. And then she decided she wanted to do it again after she turned 60. And she did 3 more attempts leading up to that final one, to the 5th in 2013. And
over 10 years ago.
Yeah, and then what was I going to say about that? It was all, I think she swam 52 or 53 hours, so it wasn't 60. She had planned, she'd always said, well, it'll probably take 60. But everything she says about that swim, when she now her most recent stories, even how when she first learned about it, just everything is not true.
Hey, if you like these kind of conversations and you'd like to see more, click like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're at the computer and you'd like to hear the whole podcast, click right here.